On-the-scene coverage of ACC 2015 is supported by SAPIEN.
I'm Peter Block in San Diego at ACC 2015 for On the Scene. With me is Sushil Kadali, needs no introduction from New York City. Sushil has been the Grand Master of transcatheter aortic valve replacement at Columbia and doing great work. We now have a new valve, and we've at Emory been involved with this, as you know, Sushil. The P3 valve, a new valve that is smaller, more user-friendly, probably a lot less paravalvular leak, and you're just talking about the results of this. So tell me about the trial to start with, and then we'll get into the results.
Sure. The trial was two single-arm registries in high-risk and inoperable patients. They're going to be compared to historical controls. So there's a high-risk cohort of 583 patients, and intermediate-risk cohort of 1,076 patients.
So actually the intermediate risk cohort is sort of edging down toward really pretty intermediate risk patients, isn't it?
It is, but it's still there. It's a pretty elderly population. The average age was 81.9, and the mean STS is still 5.3, which is not that far different than the TVT registry data right now.
Okay, so what about the results? I mean, I looked at these data and I said, wow, really?
And that's what really shocked by. The mortality in the high-risk cohort at 30 days was 2.2%. Disabling stroke was 0.9. In the intermediate risk cohort, the 30-day mortality is 1.1 with a disabling stroke rate of 1%. And this is with neurologic oversight. Even if you do stroke and TIA in both cohorts, it's less than 3%.
So we're talking about at least half less than the other partner trials,
yes,
and shockingly low outcomes for both. What do you think is the cause of that, Sushil?
I think there's a learning curve. I think we're doing the procedures better. I think that definitely plays a role. We're getting 3D imaging, better pre-procedural planning. But I think the other issue is the devices have become easier, more user-friendly. And in this patient population, if you can get through a procedure without a complication such as a bleeding event, as you know, a vascular event, a renal failure, those type of things. And I think with lower profile devices, easier to use devices, and you can avoid those complications, the outcomes improve.
We at Emory, and I know you at Columbia, have done these under conscious sedation now, and the patients go home the next day.
Right.
I mean, that's a huge step forward and actually minimizes the chance of patients getting sick in the hospital.
Absolutely. I think that's key. I mean, David Wood's done stuff with next day discharge. You do this patient awake, they walk the next day, and either day 1, day 2, day 3, people leave, and they don't leave to rehab. Like after surgery in an 85-year-old, the majority of the time they end up going to rehab. These patients, they leave on day 2 or day 3, but they go home. And I think that's the difference.
Okay, so one last question for you before we quit, and that is P3 is designed a little bit differently, has a ring around the bottom which keeps the paravalvular leak hopefully minimized. Talk to me about paravalvular leak, because that's also a major difference.
Yeah, absolutely. The rate of moderate leak, and this is 1,600 core lab adjudicated echoes, moderate leak was 3.7, severe was 0.1. And this compares to earlier trials with the SAPIEN or XT device where these rates were anywhere from 12 to 24%.
Okay, so the new SAPIEN P3, new valve, we've used it as well. It's dynamite. We all like it very much. It is clearly a new generation valve. The initial results are strikingly positive, and we'll see how going forward when it gets out in the real world how it really works. But for now, it's exciting news. Thank you, Sushil.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.